Welcome everybody to tonight's weekly live stream. I'd like to welcome everybody. Buck Stops here, Lambden. Matt Hansen from Los Alamos, New Mexico. I happen to be from Santa Fe, actually. I was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and my family still is from there. I'm from the General Baca family. My dad was his big brother. If you know who, he was the Adjutant General of the National Guard there in New Mexico. And also Blaine from Cabo. And Lambden's coming to us from California, and Black Buck Stops here coming from Colorado Springs. Like to thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm keeping up my weekly live streams. I like to get a little bit of what I've been doing, kind of thing, out of the way, anything with my channel. Pretty much I'm still in the same boat. I got company coming in this week, so we're getting ready, and we're remodeling the house still, so it's in a better shape. I also, let me explain this also. I also got a question in case they couldn't make it. And I'll go ahead and I'll tell you what we're going to start doing from now on. If you guys can't make it or you want to ask a question, you can leave a comment. When I announce my live stream, you can leave a comment and I'll get to it first. I will take priority in answering that question first, so that when you come on and if you can't make it, just like Jessie was saying, she might not be able to make it, so she wanted to drop a question so that she could watch. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is answer any kind of questions I get in the comments. Here's another thing that I'm going to start doing. If you have a question and you want to be anonymous, you don't feel comfortable maybe talking in the chat. Hey, Lisa, Anna, and Henry Liston, awesome. And one DK Tree, awesome, from Niagara, Ontario, and Morelia for Henry and Lisa. You're in the house too, and Anna too. And you're coming from Cancun, Anna. Great. So what I'm going to do is, if you have a question, all you have to do is email the question info@retiredlifeinmexiconobull.com. Once again, info@retiredlifeinmexiconobull.com. You can email the questions. If you want to remain anonymous, just say, hey, I want to remain anonymous, and I will address the question in my next live stream. And that way, if you can't make it, just like Jessie couldn't make it. I don't know if she's in the house today, but if you can't make it, Opus, I'm going to get to your question now. But I'll get to those questions first before I start anything, so that it'll be at the beginning. So let's start with this question Jessie asked. It says, hey, Ernie, wanted to get this question in just in case I have to miss the session tonight. Are you planning on getting Mexican citizenship, or is it better to stay a permanent resident? Well, Jessie, there's two trains of thought on that. I've talked about me wanting to get Mexican residency. I want to get I'm not Mexican citizenship, not residency. I'm a permanent resident. When I first moved here, we got a hold of an immigration lawyer, but we're talking about a corporate immigration lawyer that's a friend of my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law happens to be an attorney here in Mexico, so he's got a lot of contacts. So we went to one of the biggest law firms in Monterrey for a free consultation on what I should do immigration-wise. And this is a lawyer that handles people from Kia. There's big plants. They handle corporate immigration work mostly for companies and that type of thing, but they're experts in the field. And I started talking about citizenship and residency. Basically, he said, I can do the residency paperwork for you, but we charge a lot of money, because they do it for corporations. But one of his advices was, why not stay a permanent resident? And here's the way he explained it. And I do have a video about that. He explained it and actually there was a famous case here in Mexico. There was a lady, she was from Paris, France, and she got involved with a boyfriend that was part of a kidnapping group. And she got arrested as part of this kidnapping group. And hey, gringos are us. She got arrested in France intervened on her behalf. basically because she was a resident here. She wasn't a citizen. One of the things that Mexico at one point didn't even recognize dual citizenship. If you were naturalized in the U.S., you lost your citizenship up until I forgot what year. Gosh, I always remember. I think it's 1997. They reenacted the dual citizenship, recognizing dual citizenship. And actually, some of those people that got caught in the middle of that, where they lost their citizenship, actually have to go back and claim their citizenship back. But basically, Mexico says we recognize dual citizenship, but if you're a Mexican citizen, you are Mexican first to them. You're a Mexican citizen first. So what happened was this lady was in the process of getting her citizenship, but she hadn't completed the process yet. They wanted to put her in prison, and France wanted her back. She claimed she was innocent. I'm not going to go into hey, Mal, I'm not going to go into the details. She claimed she was innocent, and the French government intervened. So basically what happened first is they tried to argue that, oh, well, she's here living in Mexico, so she's under our jurisdiction. And France said, no, she's a French citizen, so you need to listen to us diplomatically. And long story short, because she didn't finish the naturalization process, what ended up happening is she ended up getting released to the French government, and she ended up going back. Now, this is an illustration. This is one that he gave me, and I actually looked up the case. It's an actual famous case here in Mexico. But what if she would have been a Mexican citizen? Mexico would have said, you know what, France, we don't have to play with you. She's a Mexican citizen. We don't have to respect your diplomatic ties. So basically, for example, if you get arrested here, if you're a resident, you can call the consulate. The consulate's not going to get you out of jail. In this particular case, it was a politically motivated case, and it went high profile. So whether the lady was innocent or not, I have no idea. But basically, this high profile case showed that basically, if you get arrested here, you can call your consulate. Now, what the consulate is responsible for is making sure that you can get legal counsel, that they're treating you fine, and all of that stuff. You're not just get thrown in a Mexican jail cell and everybody forgetting about you. So you get consulate protection. If you're a dual citizen, Mexico says, guess what? They're Mexican citizens, so we don't have to play ball diplomatically with the U.S. government. So it can be beneficial to keep your permanent residency. Now, and that's what I was advised to do, because you get the same exact benefits almost as a permanent resident as you do as a Mexican citizen. The only difference is, as a Mexican citizen, you can vote. And even as a Mexican citizen, a naturalized Mexican citizen, it's not like the United States where they can't take it away. Well, they can denaturalize you, but it's a process. Here in Mexico, you can lose your naturalized citizenship for different reasons, and so the advantages having a Mexican passport. Breaking up. Let me see here. Am I breaking up? Hopefully, my internet's getting better here. Let me know if I'm still breaking up, or is it just you, Lisa? If you guys can let me know how I sound. But long story short, there is a benefit to having a Mexican passport. For example, you can travel to Cuba, do a lot of stuff. Can you answer my question, Opus? So long story short, that there are benefits being, and I was going to do it because of and if you refresh your browser, maybe that'll help. I was thinking of it because of my wife being Mexican, and actually I'm not planning on going back, that kind of thing. But there are advantages and disadvantages to both. But let me answer this question here. And actually, Opus was asking a question: will the exchange rate go up? Opus, I've already done a lot of stuff on this. Will it go up? We don't know. Politically, we don't know the political ambient right now. when they're talking about threatening tariffs and all of that stuff, investors are a little bit weary. They're pulling back. So that's why you're seeing the peso go back up. Go back down in value. But what's going to end up happening is we're going to have to see how both administrations handle each other, both on the U.S. side and the Mexican side. Both are brand new administrations. The Mexican president is brand new. There's no telling whether it's going to go up or not. I think it's going to stay in the 20s until we start seeing a lot of this fighting over free trade, all of that stuff. We might see some fluctuations anywhere from going one way or the other. And Mexico's in a very big position trade-wise, and I'm not talking about, and it's with the United States, but also with all of Latin America. They're the biggest trade partner with all of Latin America. And I know people hate to hear this, but China's moving in, and even if China doesn't get their goods to the U.S., they're going to serve the rest of the world, and so logistically, even if we were to ban products in the U.S. or in Canada of Chinese products, okay, which I doubt will happen because your iPhone, 3/4 of it is made in China, all of that stuff. We're going to have to see what happens. And I don't know which way it's going to go. With the trade that we do here with Mexico, if Mexico starts getting it, it's going to probably go up in value. But then it all depends on how many people are going to invest here in Mexico, what the interest rates are going to look like. If there are tariffs, it's going to blow inflation on both sides of the house, both here and over there. So it's hard to tell. I mean, I predict it'll stay in the 20s for right now, or the 19s. Matt Hansen, I heard about the iPad now being considered a laptop and the new rule being enforced at Cancun Airport. What other airports have started enforcing it? Matt, the other airport that I've heard that's enforcing it is Mexico City. I haven't, and I've heard that other airports are doing it at random. It's not as consistent as in Cancun. Cancun is the one that's very famous for doing this. So I don't know. So the U.S. government consulate. Yeah, nerd. Actually, they can't do much diplomatically. I'm going to tell you right now. Unless you're some important person in the United States, like a professional basketball player that gets arrested for pot in Russia, but she happens to be a professional basketball player and it makes national news, yeah, I think the United States would go out of their way to try to get you back. But technically, the only thing a consulate does, and I worked for the embassy, for the U.S. Embassy in Brazil when I was assigned to the State Department, the only thing, and there's a big misunderstanding. Everybody says, call the consulate, because the consulate can do all of this stuff. The only thing they can do if you get arrested is make sure you're okay. Make sure they can contact your family. Make sure your family knows that you're in. But really, as far as people even contacted the consulate back in the day when they were doing 180-day FMMs, when they quit doing it, and the consulate can't do anything. And the embassy and the consulates are governed by the political agenda of the embassy. So depending on what country you're in, technically they don't do much other than, and that's the thing about permanent residency. You get consulate protection, but at the same time, okay, I've got consulate protection, but what's the consulate going to do for me? But a lot of those services are useful. Let's say you get thrown in jail and you say, I want to talk to the consulate. Sometimes even then, if just saying, I want to talk to the consulate, and if they did something wrong or detained you wrongly, they might say, oh, shoot, we don't want the U.S. government knowing that we screwed up or we did something illegal. So sometimes having the consulate on your side is good, but really all they can do, I mean, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to get you out of jail. They're not going to get you better accommodations. But if you're being abused in jail or whatever, all they can do is say, hey, make sure that this person gets that you're not being your human rights aren't being violated, basically, and also issue communication with the family, be a communication between you and the family. Um, let me see. Okay, Jim, I had a problem with you breaking up. I closed out the video and started it again, and it's fine. Thanks. And I kind of saw some stutters on my end, so maybe I'm thinking that maybe that's what you were getting the breakup. Mike Hero is the new president of communist. Not a communist. I would say probably has a lot of socialist ideas. People call her a communist. Basically, she's from the Morena party. The Morena party is basically a new party that took power with the last president. And it's a party that prides themselves on social programs. Their ideas are a lot different than those of the previous administrations. They've battled corruption in different ways. Instead of just going and sticking people in jail, they upgraded the immigration system, the computer systems, the tax systems to avoid tax evasion. But there are a lot of things. For example, Social Security doesn't exist here. Well, it did, but it didn't, and then it got. But now the elderly people, they're starting to give checks to the elderly people because so like Social Security. And there's a lot of ideas, for example, even with crime, their ideas are you're supposed to educate the kids and keep them out the street and all of that stuff. So it's kind of a socialist type. I wouldn't call it communist because communism is, everybody needs to understand this. And I think if you're coming from the U.S., everybody that's not the U.S. is communist. Okay. But you need to understand something. There's a difference between socialism and communism. Socialism is social programs. It's stuff like, actually, the United States has a lot of socialist programs. Welfare in the United States is a socialist program. Disability is a socialist idea, is a socialist program. It's not communist. The United States is not communist, but we have social programs. Free lunch at school is a social program. So it's not, these are socialist ideas. They're ideas of helping the underprivileged. And so these are social. Does socialism and communism go together? Yes, maybe. Yeah, I would say so. But communism is where the government owns your house, owns everything. And the problem, I think, with the last president here in Mexico is everybody called her a communist because that's really easy to do, because if you have socialist ideas, you're all of a sudden, you're automatically a communist. Democrats are communists. That's what they say in the United States. And the thing is it's not all Democrats are coming. Yeah, maybe on the far left, they want to do something, but the Democrats are more geared on social programs. So I would call Democrats socialist. I mean, if you want to disagree with me, that's fine. I don't care. But that's the same way that Mexico, and even they were floating around ideas that you're going to have your house taken away, blah, 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 blah. You're going to lose your property because it's going to become a communist country. None of that's happened. She's been in power for a couple of months now. None of that has been proposed. I still own my house. Nobody's taken my house away. So she's not a communist. Does she have socialist ideas, women's rights ideas, all of that stuff? And actually, I would even call them a progressive party because, and the reason why I say progressive, not woke, the reason why I say progressive is because they're doing a lot of things for Mexico that Mexico never did before. So it's very progressive in their ideas. Whether they're going to work, I couldn't tell you. And I don't get involved in politics here. So I hope that answers your question. Am I still breaking? Henry, try refreshing the browser. That's what worked for everybody else. I read today that Sheinbaum has already conceded to Trump on the border issue on a call to him. Yeah, nerd. She actually, in one of her, she has press conferences every day. And a couple of days ago, she said she actually talked to the president, congratulated him. She said that there was a very cordial conversation. She said that they both agreed that they have an immigration problem and that security on the border would be a priority and they would work together. So, yeah, she has talked to Trump already, but we're going to have to see what comes out of that. So, Malarkey drove through Aguascalientes last January, huge new Nissan plant at the new Carl's Jr. and was full of Asians. We know who invested in that factory. Yeah, actually, Mal, the Kia has a big plant here. Actually, Ford has a big plant. My Jeep Grand Cherokee, 80% of it was manufactured here in Mexico. Actually, if you buy Jeep, Nissan, Chevrolet, Kia, usually you'll find those cars for close to the same price as you'll find them in the United States. And the reason why, and I'm going to explain this because I have a customs background, is when you manufacture a certain percentage of the vehicle, and this happens in all countries. This is the way it worked. This is the way tariffs work. I'm going to let you know a little bit about tariffs and taxes. And so when you manufacture the car, what you do is you manufacture all the parts to the Jeep. And even if it's assembled in the United States, a certain percentage, depending on the country, has to be manufactured within the country. So, for example, if 80% of your Jeep parts are made here in in Mexico, and then they're exported to the United States, assembled, and then imported back into Mexico, technically the rule is you don't pay tariffs and you don't pay import taxes because you exported 80% of the vehicle back and you're bringing the vehicle back. You're just assembling it in another country. So basically that's what Nissan and a couple of other companies are doing. Kia, what they're doing is they're exporting their vehicles to the U.S. They're nearshoring, what they call nearshoring. But what happens is when Kia, either they're manufactured here and they're not even exported. They manufacture the whole Kia here in Mexico, or 80% is done and then it's assembled in the United States and sent back. Well, guess what? There's no tariffs. The very expensive cars here in Mexico, for example, a BMW costs double the price it does in the United States. A Mercedes costs double of what you would pay in the United States. Why? Because Mexico puts tariffs on the vehicles. Why are computers and electronics really expensive here in Mexico? Because the businesses pay tariffs. So anybody in the United States who thinks they're going to stick it to China by giving tariffs is only sticking it to themselves because the consumer is the one that pays. China doesn't pay the tariffs. The business pays the tariffs. So basically, this is an example. And the Nissan factory is an example of how you can get a vehicle for cheaper here. If you want a Mercedes, you pay double the price. If you want a Kia, you pay the same price as you would in the U.S. Why? Because there's no tariffs on that vehicle. Hey, Michael. Real quick, I just saw your greetings. I did check on the iPhone thing, the iPhone 16 that I bought in Mexico. It's actually a different model number, and I actually did some research. The way they block, we were talking about the health features and you were saying, hey, try to set it up with the region and everything else. The way they block on their software updates, stuff like the hearing aid and everything else, is that actually the phones that are manufactured have a different model number. I think it's Mexico, different countries. And that model number, when they do the software update, that's how they block some of the features. So some of the features will work if you change the region, but not all the features all the time. Gringo, I have heard that Merida was also doing an iPad check at the airport. Yeah, Merida. Well, you're still in the Yucatan, which is in the Cancun area and all that area, and probably the answer to the same central office. So. And I thought Cancun had backed down and was no longer counting the iPad as a laptop. You know what, Ana? I've heard different things. I've heard stuff back and forth on that. I've heard a lot of things on that. I've heard that they don't. The problem that you have, Ana, and this is what I just tell people, and this is what I'll tell everybody, is that one day they'll have the iPad rule and the next day they won't. So the problem is if you get caught with the iPad, if you get caught with the iPad and they decide we're gonna mess you over, there's nothing you can do. So I always advise people, look, just take your iPad or take your computer or take one or the other. Or if you're traveling with family, one iPad, the iPad is your kid, not your kids, but it's got to be the adults, but you get a customs allowance, one computer per person. So make sure that even though because what happens is sometimes you have the idea that I'm traveling alone because I present my passport. But if I'm traveling with a family, that your husband or your wife or whoever, or your older family member gets that allowance, so you can say, oh, well, the iPad's mine and the computer's my husband. But I don't. I just really advise. And the other thing too is here's the other problem is that I see. We were discussing this socialist country type of thing when we were talking about the ideas of the new president. Well, they're starting to give away. Not give away, but start social programs for education, for giving kids scholarships to go to college, all sorts of stuff like that. Well, the government has to pay for that. And Mexico doesn't, yes, you pay income tax on your income, but a lot of people don't pay income tax. Mexico's main way of collecting taxes is through tariffs. That's why Donald Trump wants to do this. His idea is if you collect tariffs, you get revenue from the tariffs, and then you don't have to pay income tax, which is not. Mexico is a tariff country, and they still pay income tax. I can tell you, I don't know how many other countries that I've worked with, they're tariff countries, and they still pay income tax. So anybody who thinks you're going to get rid of the income tax because you have tariffs is very, 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 very wrong. But the thing is that you got to understand that one of the things is that they are looking to collect money. They're looking to collect revenue. So what better way of connecting revenue than, oh, okay, a laptop. Now I get 3,000 pesos off for everybody that brings in an extra laptop. Or 5,000, it's a couple of $100. So it's like, can we be 6,000 pesos, $300? I'm collecting 6,000 pesos off of every person. So you need to understand that's the ambient that we're in right now. And we may see some, we'll stick it to the United States if the United States sticks tariffs on Mexico. So we're going to have to see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen. A lot of rhetoric's been pushed around. But the problem is, and I've said this before, it's rhetoric. Until it becomes official. Until Trump does all of these things that he says he's going to do, it's not official. Once it's official, then we can start worrying if it causes worry. If it's something that's for the better, then it's for the better. But I can assume that certain policies are going to take place because of the talk, but it doesn't mean that all of that stuff. It doesn't mean it's gonna take effect, or it doesn't mean saying something and doing something are two different. I mean, this is not politics. Saying you're going to do something and doing it are two different things. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, I think the immigrants here need to understand that Mexico can change the laws as they see fit. And also, Mal, the other thing about changing the laws as they see fit, a lot of these laws are already in effect. Immigration, all these people that are taking advantage of the 180-day visa and border runs and all of that stuff, oh, it's totally legal. Yeah, it's totally legal because the immigration officer lets you in. But the law actually states that you cannot live here on an FMM. You cannot live and work here in Mexico with an FMM, a tourist FMM. And it's for the sole purpose of tourism. If it's enforced, there's a difference between it being enforced and not being enforced. What a lot of people don't understand is a lot of these laws are already in the books, and technically it says you can only bring in one computer. It doesn't say that you can bring in a tablet. The customs regulations just says one computer. So somebody could say an iPad's a computer. And someone could probably say a phone is a computer. But guess what? In your customs regulations, the law actually states that you can bring in so many phones, but a tablet is not specified there. So they can interpret the law the way they want to. So she is more socialist, not communist. Yes, Mal, that's what I was saying. Is she is more socialist, social programs, and a lot of people need to understand there's a difference between socialism and communism. And people don't even realize that the United States, no matter how much you want to say it's a democracy, it has social programs. It has socialist ideas in a lot of ways. Welfare, disability, all those programs that people get. And actually, most people don't even understand that they even get those programs. Some of the programs that they get, they don't realize that those are socialist programs. That's money the government's giving you. So, okay. Yeah, firemen, police, etc., are government paid workers. Yes, that's true. Exactly, Ernie. You can't have private property in communism, whereas in socialism you can. Yes. And socialism, we need to understand, and I actually, when I was going to college, the rhetoric in the United States is socialist means communist. And that's the way we've been taught all our lives. Why? Because when I was growing up, we had Russia, and they lived true communism at one time, not now, before they broke up. And they actually, Russia was a communist country. So we have been taught to hate those ideas, hate communists, which is total opposite of democracy. I get it. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to defend communism. But what has ended up happening is that when you have socialist programs, all of a sudden socialism meant communism. You want to help the poor and give them programs to help. And actually, this happens in all city governments. You have programs to help the poor. You have Head Start, WIC, all sorts. All of those are socialist programs. And I bet you a lot of Americans don't even know that they have socialist stuff in the United States, not just Democrats. So socialism is totally different. Yes, Jesse, socialism is still a boogeyman. It's been used in an attack point in the U.S. since the 1930s. Yes, and you need to understand that it's because of the Cold War. A lot of it is why people haven't learned the difference between the two. Well, it's ignorance, actually, Jesse. It really is. And I'm sorry, but if any of you are insulted by me saying it's ignorance, read a little bit about socialism and communism and know the difference. And I'm not for or against anything. I'm just trying to educate people. That's one of the things I do with Mexico, trying to educate people of how things work. So let me see. Hey, Bruno, how's it going? Tom, hi, Ernie. Hi, Ernie. Yep, that's right. Socialism and communism are not the same thing. Most Scandinavian countries are socialist, and yes, taxes are high. However, they get great medical care, college, etc. High quality of life. Yes, Tom, that is true. This is not big news. Recently, for reasons I do not know, but Scheinbaum reissued the chocolate card directive back on November 4th for a year. It seems you can import any NAFTA origin vehicle. Yeah, and actually, there's still an import thing for electric vehicles. If you want to import, you can actually import an electric vehicle up until I think September of next year, duty free. Now, the chocolate card thing, when AMLO put it into effect, he gave that power to the states. And actually the NAFTA vehicle, you can still if it's less than 10 years old, you can still import it in. But I don't know about if you do it totally legit without doing the chocolate cart thing, you actually will pay some tariffs. But the chocolate cart thing, it didn't happen in the whole country. It was only in certain states. And they gave the actual authority to the states. So I don't even know where. Now, the authority was given to the states to run the program. Same thing as in Sabi when it was the free healthcare thing that AMLO put together at the time, was supposed to be run by the states. So the states have a choice of whether they want to run with it or not. And actually, coming back to the states having a lot of power here in Sabi, giving the chocolate card to the states, telling the states that they want to play or not. Actually, Mexico is more of a republic than the United States, because Mexico gives a lot of authority to the state power structure and not to the federal government. In the United States, it's all the federal government. So technically, when the United States wants to say we're a republic, we're a democracy, and we're not communist and we're not socialist, yes, you are. Believe it or not, you are. And you're not a republic because the states don't have a lot of power. And that's what's been the fight for many years between the conservatives giving the power back to states to decide. So, and I'm not putting down the United States, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to educate people on stuff here. So, Black Buck stops here. I just got back from my home base in Colorado from a vacation in San Jose del Cabo, Mexico for my birthday. I had a wonderful time. The art walk event in the Centro was amazing. Too much fun. Awesome Buck stops here. I like Cabo. We went there last year, and it's a pretty neat place. All of Mexico, every place has its own thing. I'm kind of seeing how I'm kind of not breaking up, but I'm kind of what do you call it? Jerking around. Maybe it's my internet connection. So hopefully you're not getting cut off, whatever. Lambden, I'm sure that goes hand in hand with making people get a tax ID number recently. Yeah, actually, that is one of the things. Let me explain to you, Lambden, what happened with this tax ID number. And it scared a lot of Americans and a lot of expats or a lot of Canadians and people for reasons, I guess. One second, let me get a water. It scared a lot of people because it's like, I don't want to give away my personal information. I want to give my biometrics, blah, 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 blah. What happened was, and you'll hear people make comments. Nobody here in Mexico pays taxes. Actually, there's one YouTuber out of Merida that talks about that. You can run a business and you don't have to pay taxes, and it's kind of optional, and the rules don't apply, and the rules are just suggestions. And well, the thing is that in the old days, you could get away with, and that's why cash is king here. Why? Because I don't want to report my taxes. And people were using the banking system, and they would get paid cash. They would deposit stuff in the bank and blah, blah, blah. When AMLO got in, he said, you know what? We need more accountability, and we need people to actually pay their taxes. And all of those people, and then not only that, but in the business side, there was a lot of funky stuff going on. They used to have these things called factureros. Basically, what happens when you run a business and you have business expenses, you can write it off on your business. What these people were doing is they were making fake facturas, basically saying, I remodeled my office, I did this, I did that, I did this, not to have to pay their taxes on their profit. Well, the problem is they were just showing paper receipts, or the factureros, which were making fake facturas, or going into the system and saying, company A sold you this or that. Well, in order to fight that system or that corruption, they actually upgraded the factura system, which is the computer system that handles these facturas and financial transactions. and started saying if you buy a car, you're going to need an RFC because we want to know who bought the car, not because they used to have a generic RFC. So a car dealership could go to a facturero, and the facturero can make 100 facturas that he sold 100 cars, but he had all of the expenses. He lost money on the cars, and they could. But what they used to do is use the generic RFC to say, oh, Juan Perez paid for we paid Juan Perez for the service, and there was no accountability because they used a generic RFC. Now they make everybody get a tax number, so now they can say, wait a second, Juan Perez doesn't really exist, and that's really why they did it. And it also, and like you said, it does have to do with making everybody get a tax ID number. They can collect revenue, and not only from Mexicans, but if you're an American making money here in Mexico, then they can track that. So good to know. Early Mexican iPhones, I believe, have a serial number and letters in the beginning. I believe the Mexican models fall under the international variants. Yeah, it does. When I looked up the model number, it's several countries, Mexico, India, I don't know, several other countries. So it's like an international model. At Cancun Airport, seem to be pulling a lot of people over, including us at customs, but they seem to be interested in if we were bringing in food. Yeah, actually, I think they're being a little bit more aware there in customs. So, and yeah, I think they're just looking for reasons to look into your stuff and see what they can do. But you're probably going to see a lot more strict customs inspections, all of that stuff. And a lot of it has to do with collecting revenue. Maybe we'll see a difference in immigration policy, depending on how the U.S. and Mexico get along. Because like I said, there's ways of poking the U.S. government or stabbing them in the back if the U.S. government, Mexico doesn't like and one of them is, oh, well, we'll just not let your people in. And I know a lot of people have told me, no, but they need to let people in because we make the economy. No, tourists don't make, yes, tourism makes part of the economy, but it doesn't make up the majority of the Mexican economy. Second of all, domestic tourism makes up more of the tourist economy here in Mexico than foreign tourism. Let me repeat, domestic tourism contributes more to the Mexican economy than foreign tourism. So if Mexico decides not to give people 180-day FMMs because they just feel like it, I don't think they're going to suffer. Trust me. Let's see here. Yeah, yeah, it's true. And I'll tell you what, a lot of those programs are on the chopping block. Actually, a lot of welfare programs with the state are funded by the federal government. And supposedly, according to Elon Musk, he's going to weed out all those unnecessary expenses. So the American people are going to see, and then they're going to see what true capitalism is. And unfortunately, true capitalism is for the rich, and it leaves the poor behind. And it actually gets rid of the middle class too, eventually. So you're either rich or you're poor. That's what ends up happening. And and it's even that way here. There's a class system here in Mexico. It's also a bad education that doesn't actually teach social studies. Well, I'll let you in on a secret, Gringos or Us. I went to a Catholic school. They were Irish nuns. And I was told that Puerto Rico wasn't part of the United States. It was part of Mexico. So there's a lot. And actually, when I was in Mexico, in the United States, and I would say my mom's Puerto Rican, they would tell me, oh, how did your mom got her green card? By marrying your dad? No, my mom's a U.S. citizen. She was born in Puerto Rico. So yeah, there's a big lack of education in social studies and stuff like that. And actually, talking to my wife, believe it or not, She's well educated here she went to an Ivy League school here in Mexico. And talking to my wife and listening to the way they were educated about Europe, about different things, uh, about Pancho Villa or different topics in different countries and Spain and their occupation. The version that you get in Mexico is more the real version than the US version. Even when you listen to people here talk about World War II and all that stuff, when you're taught in the United States that the United States went into World War II and saved the world. And World War II was going on a long time before the United States even intervened in World War II. And so it's kind of it's very interesting to see how differently you're educated in the U.S. Um, compared to here in Mexico and in Europe. Hey, Mark and Paulette, how's it going? Tom, I was in the Soviet Union back in the 80s. Trust me, there was nothing on the shelves in stores, and you just always had to look over your back. President Biden freed a lot of Americans from student debt. Yeah, Tom, I remember the 80s, and actually, I got into law enforcement in the 80s, and uh, well, actually, the Soviet Union was breaking up, but a lot of those ideas of communism and stuff. I was raised. I went to high school in the 80s. I was raised to hate communism and hate communists, and I was also raised to say that socialism is communism. But I guess I got a little bit smarter later on, and I mean I'm a little bit more educated than that, and I've been around the world, and so I have seen that there's a big difference. Actually, Jesse, I answered that question at the very beginning because I didn't know if you were going to be here or not. But what I was saying is the advantage of keeping your permanent residency is you always have your diplomatic privileges. And if you get your citizenship, you're considered a Mexican first. And so if you get arrested, let's say, and you want to go call the American consulate, but you're a Mexican citizen, they'll say, too bad, you're a Mexican citizen first. And so you do get a little bit of protection, but I was telling Nerd Uno that really all the consulate can really do for you if you get arrested is they can go to the jail, make sure you're okay, and then contact your family, stuff like that. They can contact your family, stuff like that, that you wouldn't have the benefit of having as a Mexican citizen. Now, as a Mexican citizen, you get a Mexican passport. It's accepted in more countries. Actually, believe it or not, it's accepted in a lot of countries where U.S. passports not accepted. You have to get a visa. So Mexico opens up that. There's a lot of Mexicans that go to Cuba because they're on a Mexican passport. It's a little bit harder if you're a U.S. citizen. So there's the advantages of that. Now, here's the problem with Mexican citizenship. Not problem. Here's the thing with Mexican citizenship. Naturalized citizens here in Mexico, if you're a Mexican by birth, you can't have it taken away. But if you do anything wrong here, for example, you can lose your citizenship. Even as simple as one of the issues that I was talking about is when people would get a tip, they use their they're dual nationals, and they'll use their U.S. passport to get a 6-month tip and a 180-day FMM. Technically, if you're a Mexican citizen, you're supposed to do the process as a Mexican citizen. You can't use your U.S. citizenship to do anything legally here if you're a Mexican citizen. So, for example, even if I were to buy a house tomorrow, if I were to get my Mexican citizenship tomorrow and buy a house and I use my U.S. passport, that is basis for getting my citizenship taken away. And there's certain things that you can't. The only difference and the only advantage of being a Mexican citizen is voting. You get to vote. But even political positions, even being a police officer, you can't, as a naturalized citizen, you can. In the United States, you can. My wife went into a federal law enforcement agency, and she was a naturalized citizen. Here, you can't do that. And also, you can't hold public office because you have to be born, just the same as in the United States for president. But in the United States, you could be a naturalized citizen and be in Congress and all that stuff, but you can't do that here. Now, I was going to get my citizenship, and I still am thinking about it back and forth. Um, and I'm going to turn 60. The other thing too, Jesse, is you have to take a cultural test. And it's, trust me, I went and pulled the study guide for the cultural test, and my wife, who's from here, didn't even know half the answers to the questions. So it's a very hard exam. Now, when I turn 60, all you have to do is take a Spanish test. So I was going to do that. I still have a year to decide, which I really want to do because of the culture, because of my family and everything else. And I don't plan on going back to the United States, and I don't plan on doing anything wrong. And my wife and I like to travel, so we might have some interest in traveling to places that you might not, or you might raise more suspicion with an American passport. So, and they're not dangerous countries or anything else. It's just places that, I don't know, harmless places or that you need a visa. And I don't want to go through the process of getting a visa and explaining why I live in Mexico and not in the United States and all that stuff. So that's really the advantage of it. I hope that answered your question. And Jesse, if you weren't able to join me at the very beginning, what I basically said is anybody who has questions, they can leave a comment like you did, and I will cover it at the very beginning in case you missed it or whatever. So. Oh yeah, Lambden. Yeah, for people that are interested in understanding President Sheinbaum, she does informative Las Mañaneras daily. If you are interested, she is on YouTube on the YouTube channel. Yeah, Lambden. She actually does every morning, and actually AMLO did that. AMLO started doing that. So he's the one that does that and keep people informed, and she continued that tradition. Every single day she goes in front of the press. Claudia Claudia is cracking down on corruption. I'm surprised on the recent operation. Hope we see more of this happen in other states. Actually, Michael, you're talking about all of those officials. Actually, I think one of them I think he was the Secretary of Security. Actually, when they went to arrest him, killed himself in front of the police officers because they were asking him for his gun, and he grabbed his gun and shot himself. That's the operation you're talking about. They arrested a lot of the public officials there and everything else. But if that's the operation you're talking about. Are you familiar with NU Bank, 14% on deposits? Would it be safe to deposit money and use them as a normal bank? MyFi offers 8% on my 3 million pesos, or is New Bank a Synapse dollar app in the making? To be honest with you, Blaine, I've never heard of New Bank at all. The major ones that I've heard, the major ones that I've heard, the investment banks here, I want to say, the name's escaping me right now. That we have one here in San Miguel. 14% is a little bit unrealistic in the sense. 9%, 10% sounds more like it. Actually, interest rates are going down here in Mexico. So anybody that's going to tell you that you're going to make 14% probably is very risky. I've never heard of New Bank. I'll look them up. But I've never heard of them, Blaine, but I would... and actually, okay, I'm looking at them right now. And it looks like they're more of they invest in stocks and stuff. So I would probably stay and I want to say Acnivar is the name of the investment bank that's got a little bit of a better reputation. The other issues with these investment firms, you need to be very careful, is a lot of times, we're not talking about the investment firm stealing your money, but the actual manager of the branch will take money out, transfer money off. And there's been a lot with these investment banks, there's been a lot of fraud. Agnivar, has a good and a good what you would call it. Uh, Acnivar has a good reputation, and then you can tell them put my money into bonds, and they also have a bank account. I have a friend that goes through Acnivar, but he only makes about 8%. He makes like 9 or 10%, but then he has to pay the tax. Acnivar takes care of paying the taxes for you and everything else. He said when it's all over with, he gets around 8%. So what I would be looking at is an 8 to 10%. If you do the government bonds right now, you can get 10, but you have to do it yourself. Uh, and so it's a little bit more of a complicated process. Actually, Ernie, the last referendum in Puerto Rico for statehood and independence choice, about a good amount of Puerto Ricanos have showed their vote favoring independence. Actually, Michael, there's been, I don't know if you knew this, but in Puerto Rico, there was actually a revolutionary party. Uh, Believe it or not, they shot rockets into the FBI office at one point. And there's been a big movement ever since I was a little kid for Puerto Ricans that want to be, that say they want to be independent from the U.S. It's just never happened. I don't know why. I know that it's been discussed at length since I was a little kid, and there's diehard Puerto Ricans that don't believe the U.S. should be in Puerto Rico. But yeah, that's been going on for years. No, I had an elderly American lady very surprised when I told her that she could drive into Mexico. Recently chatted with an exchange student from the UAE. I'm like, man, we're heading downhill with our educational system. He spoke 5 languages. Yeah, actually, Michael, a lot of people I even in Latin America speak more than one language. I take Brazil for example. I was in Brazil as a diplomat. Most educated people in Brazil spoke English, Spanish, and Portuguese. They spoke English because a lot of, especially I dealt with a lot of government employees. They spoke English because they dealt a lot with the U.S. government and other governments that spoke English because it's kind of universal. They spoke Portuguese because that's the native language, and they spoke Spanish because they're in Latin America. So that, and when I spoke to several people, they're required to learn those 3 languages in college, and well, if you're going on the college track, you have to speak. And in Europe, they speak a lot of the 4 or 5 different languages because of all those countries being so close together. Ernie, do you know where your mom is from in La Isla de Encanto? Yeah, she's from Caguas, actually. She's from Caguas, Puerto Rico. So, um, in Old San Juan. Yeah, Caguas is kind of, it's actually real close to San Juan. So, yep, exactly that operation. Yeah, actually, it's been all over the news. Yeah, this is a perfect example. One benefit of having Mexican citizenship, you get 180 days when traveling the UAE, as well as not being extradited to a foreign country where you are accused of a crime. Um, and that's the other thing too. If you're accused of crime in a foreign country, uh, you're basically, the Mexican government will say you're Mexican first. Okay, now, no, and I'm gonna warn people on this because there is extraditions that happen. I mean, we extradited people from Mexico into the U.S. all the time, but you have to go through the whole process, and it's a whole political process. And then 180 days. What people don't realize in Europe, you can go in as a tourist for 90 days, but then you have to leave for 90 days. You can't do these border runs like you can and they got the 90 day thing. But I think for Mexico, it's actually 180 days. Oh, 30 days. Yeah. I'm sorry. I think it's 30 and then out 90, if I'm not mistaken, Michael. I thought it was 90 and 90, but Yeah, you personally knew a Brazilian woman who spoke English and Spanish. Actually, when we were in Merida, we went on a tour of and there was a girl from Brazil, and I had told her, "Hey, yeah, I lived in Brazil for 3 years," and she was speaking Spanish perfectly, and she spoke English too. So most people in Brazil do, and most people here in Latin America that are educated, even if they say they don't, they speak more than one. They at least speak English because of the close proximity to the United States. Many businessmen here speak English uh, because they do business with the U.S. Jesse, have you heard any of the economic theories that China's population is about to collapse, so they won't be able to manufacture like they are, and the manufacturing will move to Mexico? Um, Jesse, the the Chinese have had a lot of issues to tackle. Um, a lot of people talk about them being a world dominant force, which they are economically. Actually, believe it or not, another fun fact: China owns the United States. 90% of 80 or to 90% of the U.S. debt belongs to China. Actually, the United States owes China a good percentage of their debt. Um, so financially, maybe it's 90 or 90%, but it's a good percentage. But financially, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to bash the United States here. I'm just giving you facts, okay? For those of you who, you know, uh, who don't believe this, but it is true. But they've had an issue because what happened was China was overpopulated, and then they started making laws where you can only have one child and everything else. So they have a growing older population right now that they're trying to deal with. They don't have enough younger people to take care of the older people. So China's going to have a lot of issues that they're going to have to deal with. The other thing too is that China is kind of getting isolated from a lot of other countries, and so what happens is that their goods and their products, for example, to get their goods into the United States, whoever thinks that you're not going to have Chinese goods in the United States has got another thing coming. It's still cheaper to make it. It's cheaper to make goods in China. And you know what? You only have American companies to blame. Nike, Apple, all of those companies went to China because it's cheaper. Now, labor's not as cheap as it used to be, but it's still cheaper. But it's still cheaper to manufacture whatever in China or move the manufacturing plants to Mexico because Mexico's closer to the biggest customers. The United States and Canada are their biggest customers. So what do? You move to Mexico. Yeah, labor's a little bit more expensive here. It's going to cost you, instead of 10 cents a day, it's going to cost you $3 a day or $5 a day. But you don't have to bring your goods all the way across the ocean. And then you don't have to deal with the United States saying these came directly from China, therefore 300% tariffs. They can bring it into Mexico, or they can manufacture it in Mexico where there's no tariffs at this point and still save money. And it's not just Chinese companies, it's US companies that are using Chinese manufacturers. That's basically what it comes down to. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Mexico doesn't have an extradition treaty with a lot of countries, but they do with the United States because I've worked on extraditions with Mexico. But I will tell you, when you have a Mexican citizen that you're trying to extradite, the country of Mexico will fight for you more than, or make the process harder, um, unless you're a major kingpin, drug kingpin that they decide they're going to give up for political reasons. But all right, everybody's saying to give me a thumbs up. I thank you. um, these last two times that I've gotten on, I've gotten a little bit political, and I'm bringing up a lot of these facts because, you know, I think one of the things that the feedback that I'm getting a lot of is all of these issues that may happen because of Trump. Um, all of all of these issues because of Trump that may happen, they haven't happened yet. That's number one. Saying something and doing something are two different things. And I'm going to tell you right now that, you know, even if to be honest with you, this last political election has been a joke. I mean, that's my honest opinion. Neither party offered any solutions. They just said they were going to fix it, but nobody said how. Uh, and the Democratic Party spent too much time trying to tell everybody how Trump was a criminal and, all of that stuff, instead of talking about how we're going to fix the country. The United States has a lot of problems. And then the same thing, Trump was, I'm going to fix it. How? I don't know, but I'm just so great. I'm going to fix it. That's not a way to run a country. So we don't know what's going to happen. And stuff like, we're going to send the military in to fight the cartels, and the Mexico's just going to do what we say. No, Mexico's not going to do what you say. You're going to have to get Mexico's permission to do it. Now, if Mexico can help us, then hey, we're working together. And I was a part of that. Colombia had the DEA had Operation Snowcap, where the DEA would send DEA agents into the jungle. They gave them special forces training, and they went into the jungle hand in hand with the Colombian soldiers and eradicated marijuana fields. Is that possible? Yeah, and it's happened. We've had relationships. When I was working, we had great relationships with Mexico. We were passing information back and forth all the time. We had to be careful what information we passed, but we were passing information back all the time. They were doing operations for us. So working together is not a new idea. And if any of this happens, it's going to be with the permission of the Mexican government, and mass deportations. I already told you, I worked my agency, HSI, Homeland Security Investigation, was under ICE. We reported to the ICE director. And I'll tell you right now, there's not enough manpower in ICE to do what's been promised. Now, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to see a bunch of deportations, just like you see every day, just like they do every day. That's their job, ICE's job, the actual deportation side of the house. And all you're going to do is you're going to see a bunch of media running around with these ICE agents and on film picking up all these illegal aliens, and it's going to be a big media circus. That's what you're going to see. And then Trump is going to stand up and say, I've deported more people than ever. And because you saw it on the TV, and you see it on the TV every night, the American people are going to think that they're deporting more people than they do every day. That's their job. That's what they do. ICE goes to the jail every day and grabs criminal aliens and deports them. Border Patrol apprehends people at the border all the time, and they deport them. So, can something radical happen? Yeah, but there's a lot of government regulations. There's a lot of stuff that they need to get around. There's a lot of laws. There's a lot of, you know what? When the president does certain things, he has to answer to Congress. Not everything can be done with an executive order. And actually, Congress can actually overturn those executive orders. So, we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Will someone fix the U.S. government? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Mexico is very light on border runs. People do. The U.S. stop people that keep coming in the ESTA pretty fast and tell them they need a visa. Yeah, actually, Anna, that thing with the 180 days and the border runs, it's still possible, but it's a lot less. And immigration, that's another thing they did. Immigration officials were taking bribes. For example, if you wanted 180 day, you just gave them 200 pesos and thank you very much, and I'll do your paper FMM. That's one of the reasons why they did the electronic FMM system, to start tracking all of these people, just to start tracking to see how many times you've gotten your 180 days. And there's people that are getting denied after doing it 3 or 4 times, so in a row, and leaving the country for 48 hours. So it's getting a little bit different now. Will it ever go away? No, because this is the discretion of the immigration officer. So if the immigration officers don't care and let it stamp everybody through, more power to you. You got your 180 days. You should have a second channel separate on this one, talking about politics. Actually, Michael, don't want to. I want to stay as far away from politics as possible. So, Taiwan produces the world's most trade. That's why we, the USA, are trying to produce more on our own. Actually, let me tell you something, Lambden. This is a true story, because I actually know somebody from Phoenix, Arizona, that was telling me TMC. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of TMC. TMC is the chip maker that make the chips that go into the iPhone and the MacBooks, the Apple Silicon chips. TMC decided they were going to make a factory in Phoenix, Arizona, and the state of Arizona wanted to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. So TMC, even though they're foreign owned, partly by China, but they will go ahead and manufacture. We'll hire local people, not our engineers. We'll hire local, and I guess Phoenix gave them some property or whatever. Let me give you an idea of the education in the United States. TMC, when they went to Phoenix and they started the plant, could not find enough qualified candidates to work there because they didn't have enough people with the experience or the background in chip manufacturing that they needed. For engineers and everything didn't have a clue on half the stuff they were talking about. They almost closed down the project because they couldn't get. What TMC ended up doing is they ended up, TSMC, yes, not TMC. Yes, you're right, TSMC, Michael. What they ended up doing is they ended up sending their engineers and tried to augment the rest with, and then I think the actual manufacturing is going to be done with U.S. employees. But the manufacturing, they just teach them how to put the boards together and everything else. Yeah, but politics can affect immigration, tourism, and other things for people going to Mexico. Yeah, nerd. And I have no problem in discussing the political situation and why certain things happen. I have no problem in telling you why you're not getting your 180 days, what politically is going on between Mexico and the U.S. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with politics is, for example, right now, it sounds like I'm defending Trump because I keep saying that Trump's not going to do any of this stuff. And maybe it's furthest from the truth. I'm just telling you what the truth is. I have, to be honest with you, I wasn't for either party this year because, like I said, nobody offered a solution for the United States. And I have no problem in discussing the politics that affect Mexico and you moving here and you living here or you traveling here. That is very important. And I have to agree with you, nerd. It is very important. It affects everything from trade to the prices of stuff to the exchange rate. It's going to affect the exchange rate. But what I don't like to do is get into the politics of they're going to start deporting everybody. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. He's going to become a dictator. Well, you know what? That stays in the United States. I don't live in the United States. I'm here to help people that are moving to Mexico. So I will. And these last 2 things, I've pretty much gotten into politics. But I've gotten into politics to try to kind of educate everybody here what it's like, what it's going to be like, possibly and possibly not. And right now it's too early to tell. The residency requirements is too early to tell if they're going to change them. If things get bad, like for example, the residency requirements. Let's say the regularization program goes away. Let's say it gets really bad in the United States and actually Trump starts prosecuting people against him, or they start having, I don't know, like back in the day of, what was the name? Kissinger? Not Kissinger, the guy that was prosecuting all the senator that was prosecuting all the, not prosecuting, but investigating communism. If they start getting to that point, you're probably going to see Mexico open up not humanitarian, but political asylum. But it has to get to that point. I mean, it's not, so anything can happen. And that's what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, I think here, let me see here. Oh, you're talking about the quality of microchips. um, yeah, and actually, but I'll tell you what, Michael, you were saying, yep, that's right, pretty sad. Well, NVIDIA has opened up their chip factory in Mexico. The other thing, the reason why TSMC actually picked Phoenix, Arizona is because there's an Intel plant there. So they thought they could draw on the engineers, maybe even steal some from Intel. And apparently that didn't work. They couldn't find enough qualified people. They had to bring their own engineers in. Yeah, that chip plant in Arizona was going to suck the water table dry as well. Yeah, I can imagine, to be honest with you, even Intel's been, I actually lived down the street from the, not down the street. When I was in Phoenix, I actually lived close to the Intel plant. I was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from the Intel plant. McCarthy. Yes, Lambden. Thank you very much. McCarthy was the senator that went after all the communists, and they accused everybody in Hollywood of being communist and all of that stuff. And if that happens, you might start seeing Americans apply for amnesty here. And amnesty, what people need to understand about amnesty is that you're leaving a country because you're politically persecuted in that country. And if Trump gives an excuse to say, I'm going to be politically persecuted, it could open up the doors for amnesty here. Well, we're just going to have to see. But there's a lot of political things that go behind that too. Also, Claudia has talked about her initiating a national plan on replacing China's manufacturing sector. Mexico is really going to have an aggressively invest in education, logistics, and infrastructure. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Michael, they're starting even at the bottom line of kids. They're starting to give scholarships to the parents if the kids stay in past primaria. If they make it to secundaria, I think they're even giving it to primaria to try to get the kids more educated so that they can get them into university and all of that stuff. So those are the ideas of the socialist ideas that are coming around. Yeah, what you're discussing is real politics versus political theater, two totally different things. Exactly. Um, we'll have to see what happens. I didn't hear about that about Pemex, but Pemex, I'll tell you what, nerd, is in a mess. To be honest with you, Pemex is in a lot of a mess right now. I wouldn't doubt. And actually, we have a friend. My wife has a friend whose husband works contract work for Pemex. He's an engineer and he works contract. He actually works out on the platforms, but he's an engineer. And Pemex hasn't paid him for the last couple of months, and just because they don't have money. So Yeah, Henry Kissinger, he was a different figure. The McCarthy was the one looking for communists. Kissinger was the diplomat that, yeah, he got heavily involved in Latin America. Fun fact, export. I didn't know Phoenix exports their water to Saudi Arabia. Oh, okay. Jesse said they're shutting it down. Jesse, I'm trans. Look at the election ads. There are states it's not safe to be in. We are being politically persecuted, but because I'm American, I don't know any country that will accept asylum claim. Well, actually, believe it or not, Jesse, and actually, one of the things that's really complicated right now with all of that stuff is the transgender bathrooms and all of that stuff. Um, if whatever happens, and I'm there is a very bad political environment against that, and if violence starts happening towards them, Gavin Siam from Washington, yes, exactly. I was going to just bring him up. Gavin Siam is a YouTuber. He's kind of a stupid YouTuber, to be honest with you. I hate to say it, but he is. He doesn't know the Mexican laws. He claims to be a political activist. He tries to do political activism here in Mexico. And what he doesn't know is that technically on residency, he can't do it. You're not, unless you're, the only person that can participate in here in Mexico in political activism is a Mexican citizen. You have to be a Mexican, and he does it. He goes out on YouTube and does all sorts of stuff. And he quotes the Constitution. He runs toll booths because he says they're illegal, all sorts of stuff, but he does it for attention is what it is. But what Gavin did was he ran for Washington State. He ran for an office in Washington State. And apparently he didn't win. And he said his political opponents were going to get him. So he came to Mexico. He applied for asylum and got it. And I'll tell you what, Jesse, your subgroup or of transgender or LGBTQ, if they start really taking away all those rights that you fought for to get, what's probably going to happen is there may be a way to say, you know what, I'm being persecuted in my country. Now, political persecution, you need to understand it's not necessarily political persecution from the people. It has to be from the government. In other words, you have to be able to say, like Siam basically said, the government's out to arrest me. I think he even got in trouble. He actually was a fugitive. He got in trouble and they arrested him because he started doing this stuff in the U.S. The stuff he's doing in Mexico, he was doing in the U.S. He got arrested and he ran to Mexico. He got out on bond and ran to Mexico and said that they're gonna convict me of the crime and the government's gonna get me. So you need to understand there's a difference between the people being prejudiced and persecuting you and the government. Now, if the government tomorrow passes a law that all transgenders, because this is how radical it is on the conservative side, transgenders no longer, we're going to put them all in jail. Then you definitely have a way of saying, hey, they're going to put me in jail because of my class. So that is that is literally a political asylum there. Yeah, Gavin Siam is an extreme. And actually, Michael, he should have never gotten, I don't know how he pulled it off, but he should have never even gotten. And I don't know why he hasn't been kicked out of the country, because he actually on YouTube literally has gone marching on political marches. And then he tries to rile up cops and all of that stuff. It's that YouTube genre where you go into I know my rights and all that stuff in you. So for trans are red herring, pain in the ass. The real problem is beat coding. If you get arrested for any reason, you're sacrificed to the most violent sex predator in the facility. Yeah, and like I said, now if you're going to get arrested because of your transgender, then you literally can say, I'm being persecuted by my government. So you need to understand that. And that's the problem, that Here's what, let me explain to you. In the United States, everybody is coming into the United States on an asylum claim. 99% of those people that come into that go into the United States, that immigrate and claim asylum, don't deserve it. I mean, what I mean by don't deserve it, legally don't qualify. Okay. But the way people get around the rules, and this is one of the reasons why I say nobody wants to, Trump says, we're going to build a wall and keep them all out and we're going to deport them. Well, first of all, if you change the laws on how asylum works, then maybe you could keep these people from staying in the country for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years before they see a judge. The thing is when a person goes to the United States and claims asylum, they get a right to plead their case in front of a judge. Okay, what ends up happening is they end up letting the people out on the street because they don't have enough room in the jails. And they say, when we have an appointment with the judge, and then what happens? The next appointment with the judge is 6 years from now. Or some of them just get released and never show up again. Okay, get lost in the system. So what would happen if they go in front of the judge? Okay, oh, I'm just leaving because my country, I'm poor. I'm not being persecuted by my country. The judge is going to say, order a deportation. When they finally get to the judge, if they ever do. Okay, so when people say, oh, I'm filing an asylum claim in the United States, they're filing an asylum claim to buy time. They're not filing an asylum claim to actually get their U.S. citizenship. Maybe in the 5 or 6 or 7 years, they get married to a U.S. citizen. And then they use that to finish their process. Okay. So that's what people are doing to get around the system in the United States. So political asylum isn't just because the place is violent or because I'm being harassed by the criminal element there. Or no, it has to be that you're going to be persecuted by your country. That's why I was asking about Mexican citizenship. Jesse, like I said, as long as, you're going to have to, as far as Mexican citizenship, the thing is you're going to have to jump through the hoops there's a Spanish test and then there's a cultural history test. And the book is like super thick. It's not like in the U.S. where you answer how many stars on the flag and how many stripes on the flag and what's the color of the flag. No, they're questions like, Frida Kahlo was married to Diego Rivera, and what year did they paint the famous painting, blah, blah, blah? What year was her accident? And you're like, I don't know. I know she was in an accident, but I didn't know, in a bus accident, but I didn't know what year. That's how specific the questions are. So I think even Kuru Paul at one point took the test and he flunked. And that's somebody that's researched a lot about Mexico. And that's that's why I technically don't want to take the test if I don't have to. So, because I've looked at some of those questions and I'm like totally baffled. Most people say if they build a 30-foot wall, I will take stock in a company that'll build a 31-foot ladders. Yeah. And actually the other thing too, Tom, a wall's kind of hard because there's certain areas, and I'm going to tell you right now, I worked in the Arizona area and I went down there because we had operations, especially in drug interdiction and stuff like that, that I was out in the middle of nowhere and there's no way to even put a wall up there or even get the materials out into we would have to go in through it with a helicopter. They used to have to drop us into certain areas with a helicopter. And actually, when we would go in and do our operations, we would have to get extracted by helicopter. There was no way you'd even get a car there. And we were in even situations where if we got into it with a cartel or anybody else, we were on our own. We had teams that would go in there and do that stuff, but we were on our own. So to build a wall is kind of, yeah, I'm going to wait until 60. And next year I'm going to decide whether I'm going to do it. Okay, so we're at 1 hour and 34 minutes. I passed my hour. I guess I'm going to call it quits. Just remember, if you have any questions, email me at info. The email address is info@retiredlifeinmexiconoble.com. Info@retiredlifeinmexiconoble.com. If you want to ask a question, I don't charge like this other YouTuber does. There's another YouTuber that charges you. You ask him a question and he'll either answer it by email or he'll answer it by, he'll make a whole episode, a YouTube video, and then you have to pay him $100 for the YouTube video. I don't do that. And I'll address it in my lives. I also still do my free consultations if I have the time, as long as you fit into my calendar. If you want to do that, same thing. Email me at info@retiredlifeinmexiconoble.com. I don't sell anything. I don't try to get you to buy anything. I don't ask for any money. It's totally free. I still do that. If you have any questions and you really need help, I'm here to help as much as I can. As much as I pride myself in telling the truth, I also am the first to admit that I don't know everything. If I don't know, I'll try to find out. I try my best to find out. So thank you very much for attending this live stream. I'm getting a pretty decent crowd. I love small crowds in the sense of good 30 or 40 people. Bruno, thanks. Cindy, thank you for coming. Claudia, thank you for coming. I usually get a good amount of 30 or 40 people. I like that. I know I'm getting out to everybody. Not everybody reaches out or whatever on the chat, but I hope this is being informative for you. I'm going to keep doing the lives. I can't get back to my videos yet. And then I'm not sure in December. I'm still trying to plan this in January here in San Miguel. So hopefully you can make it if you are. If you're interested, also email me, because we have a WhatsApp chat that I can add you to, so you can know what's the latest on our. Now it's also going to depend on we can get enough people and everything else, and maybe get some special hotel rates. I have a hotel already, not lined up, but an idea for a hotel where everybody could stay. It's near the Centro. So not only can we all get together, but you all can have a great time in San Miguel de Allende. So thank you very much for showing up. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep the live streams going and hopefully pretty soon keep the videos going. But I think the most important part is that I'm able to communicate with you guys through this medium of doing a live stream and answer your questions directly. I know everybody likes to watch a 2-minute video, but if you have a question, if I can answer it even email, I'll answer it email and that way. Oh, Gringos Are Us, you have another YouTube. Before I sign off, who else has signed up? Hopefully we got several YouTube channels that are trying to commit to coming in January. So, and that's what Gringos Are Us was saying. She has another one. Well, let's see what happens. We're going to start planning that. So I might not be able to do videos. Probably the videos that I do have, I did get a hold of Craig Covey, on email. Rick Joyce was great that he introduced us. I haven't had a chance to call him. I've talked to him about using Medicare in the United States. I mean, in Mexico. What times are the mercados open? Here in San Miguel, we have it on Tuesday, and they open at about 7 in the morning. But at 7, they're just getting there. Usually we go around 8 o'clock in the mercado here. It's on Saturdays and on Tuesdays here in San Miguel. Tuesdays is the big day where everybody shows up. Saturdays is kind of empty, not empty, but it doesn't have as many people there. But we buy a lot of our vegetables there. We go there all the time. We haven't gone lately because we have the house that we're messing with right now. But we'll see. let me see here. Gringos R Us hasn't said which YouTube channel. Oh, you got a GoPro camera. Awesome. Gringos R Us got a GoPro. But thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for being here most of the live stream, and we'll see you next week. So we'll, as I always say, until next time or until next weekend, stay safe and stay informed.